Hi everyone, welcome back. It's Lily from Tourism Lens. Today I'm going to get into what you wanted to hear about, which is where to live in Belize. This is for those who are moving from North America or expats, and for those as well who want to be digital nomads. Now, there's a lot to know about Belize, even though it's a small country. There are 6 districts, and I'm going to tell you some of the villages, towns, cities that I would pick, or islands, and the ones that I would also avoid. So you want to stick around to the end of this video. Thanks for watching, and let's get into it. Ambergris Caye, more commonly known as San Pedro. Now, I personally wouldn't move there because it's not my beat, but I'm putting it out there because there's a very heavy expat community there, and some people are looking for that, and that's okay. San Pedro is probably the most, I would say, touristed of all the destinations in Belize. It has lots of restaurants. It has very modern, hotels, very luxury hotels, as well as middle range and budget. It stretches, from downtown San Pedro, which is very busy, lots of golf carts, which is primarily how people get around, but also cars. And it's quite chaotic sometimes for a small place because it's grown a lot. And then you also have the south side of the island of Ambergris Caye and the north side of the island of Ambergris Caye. And then you have San Pedro town in the middle, kind of. So in the south, you'll find lots of hotels, as well as the north. North has recently, in the last few years, had a lot of bigger resorts, kind of an eyesore. But the one thing you want to know is that it's a very, very big US expat population. Personally, I don't love that because it's also not a diverse expat population. And it can get very cliquish and weird. Sometimes you go into a bar and it's like you're in the States. Like, to me, it's very hard to distinguish when you live in San Pedro. But there is still, obviously, a very, very strong Belizean culture in San Pedro that remains, even though there are lots of transplants. Most people who are there came from somewhere else, but there remains a few number of families who are originally from San Pedro. So, you just have to go and see for yourself. But it is definitely a fun place if that's what you're looking for, expensive if you have the budget. A lot of people go to San Pedro, especially Belizeans, when they want to party or when there's something happening, when they want to break as well and go on a staycation. That's kind of what San Pedro is for locals. And then, it's very close to the Barrier Reef. As far as living, though, I do know it is much more expensive and fancy and all of that. You get tourist places big time. The other thing I want to mention about San Pedro is that it does have some safety issues sometimes. I mean, let's just be honest. Like, there's a lot of there's a drug trade anywhere in the Caribbean that you go. That's just a reality, and no one talks about it, but it's there. So keep that in mind. But if you live low key and you stick to good people. And I don't want to scare anybody, but that's just a reality. It exists anywhere, even in the US. That's the truth. So if you live in any of these islands, stay low key. Don't stay out too late at night all the time. San Pedro also tends to have larger grocery stores or larger clothing stores and lots of options to go shopping. And even people from Kikoka will, in a bind, go there to buy stuff sometimes, unless they're going to Mexico. So that's kind of Ambergris Caye in a nutshell. It also has lots of sargassum on the beaches. That is normal because they have the Barrier Reef, and the way that the Barrier Reef works is that, the seaweed is very important to that whole environment. So don't look at it as, it's a nuisance. Actually, it is a good thing. So it just depends on what you're into. All in all, San Pedro and Ambergris Caye can be very good for digital nomads. For longer term retirees, that's the stuff that I told you earlier in this portion of the video. Different considerations. Kikoka. Now, I told you a little bit about it in my previous video, if you want to look at it. Let's talk about Placencia. The Placencia Peninsula and Placencia Village. Placencia Village, again, is the town part of the peninsula. So it's very walkable. It's really cute. It has lots of inner walkways that you can go from your apartment, let's say, on one end to the businesses on the other, or to the beach. The beach is actually decent. It's not your typical, let's say, turquoise water, sparkly white sand, but it's still a nice beach. It has clean water. Sometimes there's sargassum, but it's very long. It's one of the longest beaches in Belize. I could actually see Placencia being a great digital nomad base. I mean, I've done it. I've actually stayed there like a couple of months, 2 or 3 months over the winter, and rented an apartment there from a lady who also lived like above me. And it was fine. It's easy to get around by bike. It's easy to get around on foot if you're in the village. And if you have a car, it's also very easy to drive up and down the coast because Placencia has different areas. Once you get outside of the village, there's Saint Bite, which is a Garifuna heritage village. And then there's Maya Beach, where you have a lot of expats, American folks who have villas up there, etc. And yeah, Placencia has also grown a lot in the last few years and attracted development, attracted a lot of retirees and expats. It does have quite a good, strong community, I would say. If you go in the high season, if you live there in the high season, it can be quite buzzy and great and fun. It does have a very solid nightlife, by the way. There are people who go to certain spots on the weekends if you're into that. Overall, I would say that when it's the slow season, it can be really slow and there's not much to do. Not much to do there unless you go on excursions or go with your car and go inland. You can go to, some of the rainforests that are close by. You can go to Hopkins. You can go to different destinations around you. But like, how many times can you go on road trips? You know what I mean? So like, you have to think about that too. In terms of healthcare, I want to mention that like the best hospital care that you'll find is in Belize City. So you do want to keep that in mind. So if you're living in the south, then you need to get to Belize City, and that would require a long drive, or flight. You can fly local on Tropic Air or Maya Air. Now, I don't remember having internet issues in Placencia, maybe once in a while. It wasn't like super fast, like most of Belize when I was there. It's definitely much better in the city, obviously in the cities, and in San Pedro is quite good as well. The other thing that I think doesn't get talked about very often, and this is not a popular opinion probably, but it's the truth. Once in a while, you will hear about home invasions. For those of you who are Americans or who are retiring and want to go live, let's say, on the far end of the Placencia Peninsula, away from everything, I would think about that very carefully. I would think about being isolated, period, very carefully. I don't think that's a good idea for expats. I think that it's easy to stick out as someone with money in Central America or in Latin America or in Caribbean, etc. So you want to just like try to be as low key as possible, or be in a community that you have a good relation, you build a good relationship with. Building a relationship takes time. So that's why you want to first go back and forth before you make the big move. But if you're just going out of the blue, don't go somewhere isolated. You know what I mean? Like, protect yourself. So be smart. Just try to be in a place that is populated at least, and your nearest neighbor isn't like way down the road, or like no one knows you. Relationships are very important when you live in these regions. It is make or break. Like, it's always good to have somebody on the end of the phone that you can call if something goes wrong, or if you have an issue, or someone who's well connected, because that's how it works in the Caribbean and South America and Central America. It's like who you know. And when you're an expat, it's very easy to get swindled or to get, tricked. So you want someone who can tell you the truth and who can be there for you if stuff goes sideways. The Cayo District and San Ignacio. San Ignacio is the downtown, and next to it is Santa Elena. And these are the two bustly little mountain towns that are just really lovely. If you want inland, which a lot of you have mentioned to me, that is a good option. Although there are many options around it are inland. The Cayo District is lush. It has waterfalls, it has rainforests, it has small towns that are primarily like small stores. It has San Ignacio has a very famous farmers market every Saturday where all of the vendors come from all over to sell their goods, including the Mennonites. Somebody said I forgot the Mennonites. I did. Sorry. But so it's a great glimpse of who makes up Belize and what they sell. And they also even come from Guatemala as well, etc. You can buy all of your stuff there, which is wonderful to have access to a fresh fresh fruit, fresh vegetable market every Saturday there. And they also have music, and it's just like a whole town event. There's also areas where you can buy, have your breakfast there. It's really nice. You get to watch them make handmade tortillas and pupusas and all kinds of stuff. It's a super fun time. So other than that, you probably, I would say, would need a car if you lived in that district to get around easily. You don't want to suffer through the buses, which are not very frequent, and then, it's just not convenient. So if you want to be a pedestrian, you'd want to pick a little small town that is easily walkable. San Ignacio is also on the river, which at some times of the year does flood, but nothing, major, because you're going to be living a little bit away from that. But it's a nice area. Yeah, it does have a solid expat community. Let's just face it, Belize entirely has tons of expats. So that's just the thing, unless you really go more rural. Somebody had asked me what kind of place they could go to if they wanted to just live a low-key life, maybe even farm their own stuff and plant foods and whatnot. I would say look into Punta Gorda. So Punta Gorda is in the deep south of Belize. It's very often known as the forgotten south, but it's not forgotten. It is just, one of the districts. It's very rural, very, very rural. The lifestyle there is super laid back. It's like stepping back in time, basically. Punta Gorda town does have shops, some restaurants, etc., but it's nowhere near say San Pedro. It's just not the same. It's just not what Punta Gorda is. Punta Gorda is, it's very Belizean. I think I actually like it for that reason, and it is slow. So if that's your beat and you want maybe to consider buying farmland, or maybe you want to farm foods, then I would say look into Punta Gorda. I would advise you to find someone though who is knowledgeable on these things in Punta Gorda and could guide you. It will take you going there, staying, talking to people, looking around, and making sure you associate yourself with honest people. You're going to have to rely on your gut a lot when you move abroad, let me tell you, because you're going to have to rely on people, and you don't know who's good, who's not good, but you should always trust your instincts. Corozal. Corozal is a lovely coastal town on the north of Belize. There are expats there as well who live in gated communities. It also has, however, a very rich East Indian heritage community in Corozal. So, but the other thing is that it's very quiet, very, very, very quiet. The benefits of living in Corozal would be lower cost of living, being by the seaside. You can get on the ferry and go to San Pedro. It's a bit of a trek, but you can do it. I think it's about an hour. I have to check. Don't quote me on that. But there is a ferry. There are limited shops, but it's also close to Mexico. If that's something that you would like to consider, go check it out. I personally don't love Corozal. I could go and stay a couple of days, which I have. A very, good colleague who's out there, who used to have a restaurant out there and who retired actually from the States and moved back there. But I personally that's not where I would retire. I just don't, but again, I don't have ties to it. So that's why. If you have ties to it, I get it. If you are considering somewhere very, very quiet, low key, that's something to consider. That's also close to Mexico. I personally don't feel a vibe in Corozal. That's just me. Off of Corozal also is a fisherman's coastal village called Sarteneja. Sarteneja is very special. It has lots of history there. They have a history of making boats, wooden boat building that has a long history in Belize, and a very small community. I would imagine if you were running a hostel there or a little business, it might make sense for you. But overall, it's quite isolated, and it's very, very small. Now, where would I not move to? I'm going to be honest. I think every area of Belize has its pluses and minuses. Just because I wouldn't live there, it doesn't mean that there are bad places to see. Absolutely not. I've had excellent time in Belize City, for example. I have lots of friends there, and they've shown me what Belize City actually is beyond the headlines. Yes, there is a south side of Belize City that is, crime-ridden, has gangs, etc. But tell me what city here in the United States doesn't have that. However, it's not exactly the big metropolitan city that we are used to or that we know on this side of the pond. Walking around downtown is okay at certain times of the day. It's fine, to go shopping or whatever. And there's not much to see, though, except for a couple of the museums that are definitely worth a stop, like the Museum of Belize, the House of Culture. When there are big events, festivals, Belize City is super fun. And that usually happens in September. I don't know if you know, but Belize has September celebrations for independence. They spend like 3 weeks celebrating, and there are events all over the country, including in Belize City. Belize City is not the capital, Belmopan is, but Belize City is definitely the pulse of the heart of Belize because everyone has to pass through there. There's lots of businesses. It's just like the heart of the country in terms of like every service you can think of, and also health-wise. So, keep that in mind. It's also where you catch the ferry. Like literally everybody has to pass through Belize City, whether you're local or tourist. So it could be fun for a couple of days, but to live, not for me, I don't think. Another one I wouldn't move to is Orange Walk. Orange Walk town is lovely to visit. It has one of the most beautiful rivers in Belize called New River, lots of wildlife. It is really wonderful. And again, because of my book that I already told you about, I met, lots of people, and I have very good friends from Orange Walk who are wonderful people. It's primarily kind of Latino up there, and people speak Spanish a lot, and it's a fun vibe, but you have to have someone who knows. And to live there year round, for me, that just wouldn't work. I don't have any ties to the area, and it doesn't speak to me. So in terms of long-term stays. In terms of short-term visits, sure. Another place I want to mention is Hopkins Village. Hopkins is a Garifuna village. It was historically and is historically a village where the Garifuna settled. It has changed a lot, though, in the last few years, and even some of the residents there will tell you who are native to the area. It's changed a lot. Tourism has completely changed the Garifuna village of Hopkins. You still have, original descendants of the Garifuna who are there, who live there, who have businesses there, and I highly encourage you to support those businesses. A lot of American expats have moved into that village, however, bought up property, particularly oceanfront property, and also like up and down, because there's like Hopkins Village, which is where everything is bustling, shops, restaurants, etc. But you also have restaurants. It kind of spread out. So you have on one side, you have more foreign resorts and, glitzy resorts. And then on the other side, you also have restaurants and stuff. But there's a lot of expat businesses. Obviously, not all expats are one and the same. Some are good people. Some are not so great people. I've met, all kinds while I was in Hopkins, researching my book. I've met really wonderful Garifuna folks who told me that, had a business and told me that how much the village has changed for them, how it's impacted them, how it's also the fact that expats, once they set up their fancy little businesses, take away business from locals. That is one of the things that I would hear. Including restaurants, they would patronize a restaurant for a long time and then suddenly they don't go there anymore and suddenly they open their own and then everybody goes there, everybody as in tourists. So I don't know, there's been a lot of tension when I was there in the last, that was like, before COVID. There was quite a bit of tension between some of the Garifuna residents and the expat population, and it felt very separated. Like it's just like the expats hang out with the expats, the Garifuna hang out with the Garifuna. I didn't like that very much, and you could tell very easily just by going to local bars or going to an expat-owned bar, and you'd see who was there. It was just a bit too strange for me. I do have, however, very good people that I know in the village. So, you don't generalize everyone. I don't. But I know that to live long term, that would not be my choice. I also just wouldn't want to add to strife that is already existent of foreigners coming in and taking over from residents, local indigenous residents. Now, that's a wrap, guys. A lot of choice in Belize for a very small country. It's 6 districts. But now you have some of the pros and cons that can help you figure it out. But for those who want to try Belize at least for a year, my goodness, it's a great place to do that. Really, really great. You could try, a few weeks in the Northern Keys, then you could go to Cayo and spend a few weeks there or a few months, and then you could go to Placencia Peninsula, and then you could go to Punta Gorda. It's very easy to do. I spent a year doing my book and returned many, many, many times. And that's exactly what I did. I lived in the different districts. So that's how I know all these things. And I'm telling you my honest opinion. I am not sponsored by anyone. I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. And let me know what else you'd like to know, whether about Belize, Dominican Republic, or any other place that you're thinking of moving to. I'm happy to share my experiences. And just let me know. Drop me a question in the comments. Let me know if you live in Belize or have lived in Belize and what your impression was. Thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you next time.